We're going to turn now to the Democratic senator from Rhode Island, Senator Jack Reed. He's also the ranking member on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Obviously an important time to talk to you, Senator. I first want to start by getting your reaction to Andrea's reporting there and the talks happening in Geneva today. What is your take on what appears to be Iran digging in and not really being open to serious negotiations while the bombs continue to fly from Israel?
Well, I think the Iranian reaction is, at the moment, just trying to reorganize itself and develop the capacity and the replacements for those individuals in the chain of command they lost. And I first think their instincts are to say, we're going to fight, we're going to fight, we're going to fight. That, I think, is designed as much for internal consumption in Iran as it is for external consumption. But history seems to suggest that they would be very reluctant to give up their nuclear capacities, and also very reluctant to basically change their approach towards the Middle East, towards Israel, towards other countries. So, again, I'm not surprised that this defiant tone, it reflects, I think, the philosophy of that government going back many decades.
Now, I want to get to the heart of this issue over intelligence as it relates to Iran and who we should trust and who we shouldn't trust. Back in March, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified that the intel community's assessment was that Iran had not made a decision to rush toward making a nuclear weapon. Just the other day, President Trump said Iran was weeks away. You heard him just a few minutes ago on the tarmac in New Jersey say that Tulsi Gabbard was wrong. What is your understanding of the intelligence assessment right now, and who should we believe as it relates to just how close Iran may be to developing and being able to use a nuclear weapon?
Well, Tulsi Gabbard's assessment was based upon the analysis of the intelligence agencies, all of them, who are experts in this area and also have been following the developments within Iran. The other thing that seems to be odd is if Tulsi Gabbard was incorrect at the time, why didn't the president or someone else correct the issue? So moving from a position of the administration that Iran has not developed a nuclear weapon to suddenly they're moments away from one seems to me to be sort of an odd position. Again, what I have heard from the intelligence community is that indications are that they are not weeks, days, months away from a nuclear weapon. So I think there is time to negotiate with them. At the point that the intelligence community concludes that they have a weapon or they're literally weeks or months away, then that's the point at which kinetic action is probably called for.
So then from what you've heard from the intelligence community, what the D&I has testified to publicly seems to be much different than the assessment that the president is using. Should we take from that he has put more faith in Israeli intelligence and their assessment of the situation than he would be our own intelligence community, the United States intelligence community?
Well, he seems to have publicly rejected what is the conclusion of the United States intelligence community. As I said, there was no attempt to correct Director Gabbard, if in fact she was in error, and that was months ago. And I don't think the process could be so accelerated within several weeks or a month or so that they went from no intention to they're on the precipice of having a nuclear device. The president, I think, seems to be just simply dismissing the intelligence and trying to find a way through a very difficult problem. Do we become involved operationally and militarily in this conflict, or do we try to move to a position where we can hopefully force negotiations? But again, I think, from what I've heard, and I must point out, the administration has not been that forthcoming about the latest intelligence, their plans, particularly their plans after an attack on Fordrove, for example. So I think a lot of this is just the president's perception of his current situation, not intelligence of the United States intelligence.
And to that end, we have reporting that the D-R.I, Gabbard, has been sidelined from some of these internal discussions on what's happening with Israel and Iran. Are you confident that President Trump is getting the correct advice from the correct people and from the intel community specifically as he weighs this decision?
Well, he has some very competent people around him, particularly the military professionals. But again, at a decision of this magnitude, you want to hear all the voices, and you would think he would certainly want to have the Director of National Intelligence, or if not the Director of National Intelligence, then the CIA Director and others, although he does have the CIA Director in his group. But I think they're just simply trying to distance her from her testimony months ago, because they've adopted a new reality that, they have a weapon and it's ready to go. And I don't know if that's confirmed by intelligence, recent intelligence.
All right, let's pivot now and talk about the U.S. military's capacity to handle whatever could potentially be as a result of the president's decision here. And you had Secretary Hegseth before your committee earlier this week. He, of course, is in the chain of command. He'd be involved in any decision or any execution of an order that's handed down by the president. I know you've been critical of his early tenure in the Secretariat. You certainly voted against his confirmation. What's your level of confidence that he can handle such a decision of such incredible magnitude?
Well, as you've just pointed out, he seems to have been excluded from the serious considerations about what should be done, which is very disturbing, because you would assume that Secretary of Defense would be talking to the president constantly. But as your slide demonstrates, he seems to be being completely ignored by the presidential team, which doesn't suggest that he'll play a critical role in this. That I think is an indication again of the president's willingness to listen to some people and his unwillingness to listen to others. So he's sidelined, and we have the capability, working through our Central Command, through the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Command, to conduct military operations. But we're missing a voice, the civilian leader of our defense platform.
Just quickly, before we go, sir, at this point, would you support a U.S. military strike to take out Iran's nuclear program?
I think, frankly, we have to learn a great deal more about what's the facts on the ground. Obviously, we do not want to see the Iranian government get a nuclear device. And also, we want to ensure that Israel is protected from strikes by the Iranians. That's why we've moved destroyers, and we're combining with them to defend the country. Those are two imperatives. But until we're briefed, and I hope we're briefed quickly about the details, since they seem to be contradictory, as the intelligence community is saying one thing and the president saying something else, we need to know what the facts are.
Okay. Senator Jack Reed, you're expected to get that briefing early next week. We'll have to talk to you more about that afterwards. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you being here.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live on our YouTube channel.